Good evening. I call this meeting of the Town of Cary Planning and Zoning Board to order. Thank you for joining us tonight. All board members, staff members, and applicants are participating remotely. Our board clerk, Julie Mitchell, will now take roll call for this evening.
I don't hear anything.
Did you guys hear that?
I heard you, Steve. Is Julie still on the meeting?
Okay.
Good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
very good.
Sorry.
You can call roll now.
Thank you. Good evening and thank you, Chair. The following board members are not able to join us this evening: Mary Jo Hill and John Sorrell. I will call on the following board members. Please state either aye or present so I can take attendance. Andy Coe,
Present.
Jessica McClure,
Present.
Jeff Moncrief,
Present.
Jessica Pearson,
Present.
Michael Roselli,
Present.
Don Hamilton,
Present.
and Stephen Crutchfield.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just going to the next section, just some general remarks. The Cary Community Plan will continue to be the guiding document for this board. Our role is to function as citizen advisors to the town council, who will make the final decision on all rezoning activity. Your citizen opinions, those of the board members, based on the community plan document, are very important in advising our town leaders. While this is a public meeting, please be aware it is not a public hearing. There is no opportunity for the public to speak during this meeting. If you have comments about any of these cases, we encourage you to reach out to the staff case manager or the applicant by phone or email. You may reach out to board members through email. You may also contact council directly through email or during the public speaks out portion of any regularly scheduled town council meeting. Because we are meeting remotely, I will call on each member individually to verbally confirm their votes on each motion this meeting. These meetings may be streamed live on the Town of Cary website and/or YouTube, and are available online for later viewing if you'd like to look over past meetings. The first action item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. And I would be looking for someone to please make a motion to adopt this meeting's agenda.
This is Don.
Thank you, Don. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'll now call the roll to on the adoption of the agenda. Andy Coe?
Yes, so moved.
Jessica McClure?
Aye.
Jeff Moncrief?
Approved.
Jessica Pearson?
Aye.
Mike Roselli?
Aye.
Don Hamilton?
Aye.
And I, Steve Crutchfield, also vote in the affirmative. The next item is approval of the regular meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the November 15th meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our last
Okay.
meeting.
Thank you. And can I get a second?
I'll second this, Jeff. Yep.
Thank you. We're going to call the roll now on the adoption of the regular meeting minutes. Don Hamilton?
Aye.
Mike Roselli?
Aye.
Jessica Pearson?
Aye.
Jeff Moncrief?
Aye.
Jessica McClure?
Aye.
Andy Coe?
Aye.
And I, Steve Crutchfield, also vote aye. Okay, our first, we have two new cases tonight and one LDO amendment to discuss. And the first case is 21 REZ 13 to Sherry Temple. This first case will be presented by Associate Planning Director Deborah Grannon, who will share the staff's presentation. Following the presentation, the applicant will share their remarks, and all board members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff and the applicant. Ms. Grannon, you may proceed.
Thank you very much. Good evening, board members. For your consideration this evening is a request from the membership of the Venkatswara Temple. They're seeking an amendment to existing zoning conditions to the property as they continue their efforts to meet the growing needs of the community. The subject property is located at 121 Balaji Place, adjacent to the 9400 block of Chapel Hill Road. The property is zoned office and institutional conditional use, and that designation would remain in place, but there are new and modified zoning conditions proposed for the site. As you may recall, 2 years ago, you recommended approval of the request for the Rajagopuram, an elegant gateway monument near the temple's entrance. There were multiple zoning conditions that restricted sound and lighting, prohibited telecommunication equipment, and limited the height of this monument. Those conditions are not going away, but the membership of the temple is seeking to add an assembly hall to the property so that they can facilitate weddings and religious education opportunities on the site. So to achieve this, they've had added club, lodge, or hall to the list of permitted uses. They've proposed that the maximum square footage of occupiable structures on the site will not exceed 55,000 square feet. And this square footage would include the existing temple, but it would allow for construction of a new marriage hall or an assembly hall. To stay within the square footage limits, the applicant has offered to remove several existing structures on the property. Finally, the applicant offered to provide 2 electric vehicle charging stations on the property. So on this next slide, you'll see some of the examples of some of the buildings to be removed, including several detached dwellings that front Chapel Hill Road. This is going to create an opportunity to improve the streetscape plantings across the front of the property. And on this next slide, you'll see that there's also the areas circled in red that shows both those houses I just showed you and several small storage buildings and structures that are not visible from the street. But removal of these structures are going to add to the aesthetics of the site as well as the functionality in terms of where that marriage hall and assembly hall can be located. So in staff's review of the request against the policies of the Imagine Carry Community Plan, we find that the work, shape, move, and serve chapters are most applicable. This would expand cultural assembly opportunities that help support a diverse workforce in our community. The project represents redevelopment along a highly visible corridor. Road improvements will be required as part of the development plan, and that's going to help improve safety on Chapel Hill Road. And by providing electric vehicle charging stations, that zoning condition might help to improve air quality. The Imagine Carry Future Growth Framework Map identifies the property as being in the traditional neighborhood category, and religious assembly use is appropriate in that category. Property owners within 800 feet of the subject property were notified by mail, and that exceeds both the state and the land development ordinance requirements. And information about the public hearing is on the Town of Cary website. The property was also posted with public hearing notices along Chapel Hill Road. Staff facilitated a virtual neighborhood meeting on October 6th. There were 25 people plus the applicant and staff in attendance. Most attendees voiced support for the use, but there were concerns addressed about traffic on Chapel Hill Road, congestion at the entrance to the temple, and the observation that sometimes visitors to the temple park in the adjacent neighborhood. So the applicant has met with those citizens on more than one occasion. Since the public hearing, staff also received 2 emails from citizens offering additional comments and concerns related to traffic. But we had multiple emails, close to 40, from citizens offering support for the proposed assembly hall, since it provides opportunities for both the marriage ceremonies I mentioned and Sunday school classes. In reviewing the proposal, staff finds that this request is consistent with policies of the work, shape, move, and serve chapters of the Imagine Cary Community Plan, and staff recommends approval of the request. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's representative, Glenda Top, is available for comments and questions, and then I will be available for your questions following her remarks. Ms. Top? Let's see if she's still here.
I'm muted.
There you go. You're back.
Okay, I'll start again. Thank you, Ms. Grannon. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, my name is Glenda Top, and I'm with Glenda S. Top and Associates here tonight on behalf of the temple. And Ms. Grannon has very thoroughly presented what's being proposed tonight. What I'll add is the temple is very excited with this amendment. As you know, over the years, the temple has grown tremendously, and there is a need for a facility to have events, many of which have actually partially occurred outdoors. So this will allow them to have their activities indoors. With this, which they're very excited about, and I know the town and surrounding property owners are, they will be removing several houses and structures. This will also allow for a streetscape to be built along Chapel Hill Road at their frontage. Hopefully traffic will be improved because of the road improvements to Chapel Hill Road. The temple sees themselves as a gateway into the town, and they believe that this will just enhance that. We do meet the policies that Ms. Grannon mentioned in the Cary Community Plan, and we would ask for the board's support, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any, and thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you. As I mentioned in the opening remarks, the Cary Community Plan is in place to guide development for the town of Cary. As you think about your questions, keep in mind how this proposed case fits or does not fit the community plan. And later, when making a motion, it would be very helpful to describe how you see your motion impacting the community plan, for example, through the work, shape, live chapters. While it's not a requirement, it really helps the town council understand how you think this case applies to the plan. We'll now open it up to board members for any questions or discussion. And Don, we'll start with you. Any questions?
Just a quick one. In the staff report, it mentioned a traffic signal study. If that was to be done, who would do it, and is there a cost associated with it?
This did not warrant a traffic analysis. The peak hour trips did not exceed 100 peak hour trips. So that was something that our engineers evaluated and determined most of the activity associated with this assembly hall for Sunday school classes and marriage ceremonies would occur on weekends, or maybe, during, evenings from time to time, but not during the peak hour when most people are going to and from work. So there was no requirement for a traffic signal analysis.
Okay, thank you. I must have misread it and misunderstood it. I appreciate it.
Anything else, Don? Mike Roselli, questions?
No questions. I didn't hear anything that sounded inconsistent with the town plan, so I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, thanks. Jessica Pearson?
Thank you. This question is for Ms. Grannon. It was mentioned that there was a concern over parking in the adjacent neighborhood. With the assembly hall, like future development plan, would that be addressed? The parking requirements for a large facility like that would be addressed during the development plan review?
Yes, indeed it would. Thank you. And that's something that would happen. The applicant is ready to submit that development plan just as soon as they get their zoning in place. And part of what it will include is both the new building, the new structures, and the location of the parking associated with it.
Oh, excellent. Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Moncrief, questions?
No, I was curious about the parking as well, but no further questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Jessica McClure, questions?
Yeah, one question, when talking about improving the streetscaping along 54, and I apologize if I overlooked this in the staff notes, are they going to be widening 54 on the rest of their frontage? To the
Yes,
ultimate cross? Okay,
just along their property frontage
Sure.
that, right directly in front of the site, that's where site improvements will be required. They don't need to do both sides of the road, only the property frontage where the temple is currently located.
sure. Okay, thank you. That was it.
Okay, thanks. Andy Coe, any questions?
None that haven't already been addressed. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I have a couple of questions. The first one is the space that's being created, is it for the temple members' use? Is it going to be open to the general public for rental, or how does that fit into this? Or is that part of any of the conditions, or does that really not have any bearing on this?
Well, that's a good question, and I will let Ms. Top speak to that, but my understanding is that anyone can be a member of the temple. Anyone who's interested in becoming, part of the temple, and attending it. How that works when it comes to using the facility for marriage ceremonies and things of that nature, I'll see if the applicant can speak to that and add any additional insight.
Thank you, Ms. Grandin. I believe how you've answered is correct. And I may not be using the right terminology, but within the religion, the different sects, you're right, you do not have to be of one type to be a member, but it is, as far as I know, you would have to be a practicing temple goer to be able to take advantage of it. It's not like being advertised as a marriage hall and anyone can call up and rent out space.
That was really what I was trying to get at. Is it going to be open to just rental? Finding a space for meetings in this area is not always very easy. And this is a very large space. So that was what my thinking is, and it kind of ties back in with parking, 55,000 square feet. That's a big space. That's a lot of people that could drive, that could add to the additional cars parking, that would have a big bearing on how the use would be in traffic studies. I don't think anything was based on other than the temple members. But I just wanted to be clear on that.
Yeah, you're right. And there's very strict rules and regulations to enter into the facility. So this would not be something that you could just have a group come in and use it.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
and if I could clarify, Chairman Crutchfield, the 55,000 is not the size of the new assembly hall. That would be the total square footage. So that would include that existing building that you see today, the existing.
Oh, gotcha.
temple
Okay, thank you.
on the property, and then there's a smaller original temple on the property as well. So that 55,000 square feet would be the total square footage on that entire parcel.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you for that. And just last, and I remember this so well when we approved the Raja Gopurium. We had a great discussion whenever that was 2 years ago. This is really the gateway to the west from Cary. And you said earlier, I think it was said that the Chapel Hill Road is going to be widened in front of the temple property.
Correct.
Are
With
there
the
any
development
plans
plan.
by the state to widen Chapel Hill Road, period? through that all the way down to like Morrisville, for example, or is that still something the state is not even have ready to go?
Yeah, we don't know of any definitive plans on that, as is always the case in Cary. Our first resource is to get the developer, when they're making site improvements, to make associated road improvements at the same time. The temple does own some additional land to the east, and if and when they develop that property, they'll be responsible for doing road improvements there as well. There are some little gaps, you know, in the property where there's a couple of houses there just to the west of Balaji Place. So it may be a while before we get that complete road network widened to its ultimate build out, but we are doing it incrementally with development. But there's not a plan in place right now for DOT to make changes out here.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have. Does anyone else on the board have any questions that we didn't get earlier? Okay, if not, is someone prepared to make a motion for 21 RAZ 13, the Siri Temple? I think
This is
the
Don. I'll make a
verbiage
motion.
is up the screen.
This is Don. I'm prepared to make a motion.
Thank you, Don.
I move that the board find case number 1 REZ 13 is consistent with the comprehensive plan, all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the P&Z board.
Okay, thanks. So would someone like to second?
This is Mike. I'll second.
Thank you. Don, since you put this forward, what are your thoughts on this?
We've really hit on it tonight. I agree that this is really the gateway coming from that side of town. And I think removing a lot of that stuff will really improve the appearance. So I'm basing most of it on the shape chapter.
Okay, and Jeff, what do you have some additional comments to make on the motion?
No, I second the motion. Being newer on the board, I'm trying to remember my various implementation to the plan. But serve and inclusion, obviously, this is an opportunity to continue to be inclusive of a number of individuals, and I'm supportive of the motion.
Perfect, thanks. Mike Roselli, comments?
Aye. I have no further comments.
Okay, Jessica Pearson.
Yeah, I am also inclined to support the motion that's been made along the lines of the work chapter, supporting a diverse workforce and an important population in the town of Cary, as well as the move chapter, where the corridor improvements will improve safety for traffic safety, and then also the serve chapter. We didn't really touch on the EV stations that are proposed, but those, I think we'll be seeing more of those, and they will improve air quality. So for those reasons, that those chapters in the Imagine Cary plan, I think we should recommend that that this is consistent with the Imagine Cary plan. Sorry, my words are just not coming to me this evening.
Perfect, thanks. Andy Coe, comments?
Yes, I support the motion. Also because it checks so many boxes in that it is consistent and supports the Imagine Cary comprehensive plan. And kudos to the staff for putting together a very comprehensive overview and recommendation. It was very well done. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks. I also will support this. I agree. This is a great sign of inclusion. The architecture is something that should really be a great representation for the Western Gateway, and I look forward to seeing it completed. And this is I think very consistent with the areas of the plan that have already been pointed out. Okay, any other comments that we didn't get to?
Mr. Crutchfield, Jessica McClure was skipped in the roll for discussion.
Oh, I'm so sorry. My bad. Jessica
That's all
McClure.
right. It's basically, I'm inclined to support as well, just kind of echoing, as you mentioned, everybody, not only putting another piece along that corridor to help widen it if, the state can't get to it for a while, but also, kind of helping redevelop certain areas. And I think that area right in front of there specifically, is a good candidate for that.
Thank you. Sorry about skipping you.
No problem.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, perfect. I'd now like to, we'll call the roll, and if each of you would state your vote on the approval of 21 REZ 13. Don Hamilton?
Aye.
Mike Roselli?
Aye.
Jessica Pearson?
Aye.
Jeff Moncrief?
Aye.
Jessica McClure?
Aye.
Andy Coe?
Aye.
And I, Steve Crutchfield, also vote in the affirmative, aye. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
We're going to now move to our next case for the evening, which is Act 20 and Urban Forestry Manager Katie Rose Levin will share the staff's presentation. There will not be an applicant speaking on this case. All board members will, of course, have an opportunity to ask questions of staff following Ms. Levin's presentation. So if Ms. Levin, if you would please proceed.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to present Act 20. And Katie, I think you're going to be moving the slides for me. Is that correct? All right. Magic. Yes. All right. So Act 20, with Act 20, Act 20 continues Cary's long-term strategy of updates to Cary's land development ordinances. Like all such updates, Act 20 is based in values, guided by data, and resulted in these recommendations for the Planning and Zoning Board to review and recommend if they are consistent with the, oh, we're moving quick, but that's good, consistent with Cary's community plan. So Act 20 consists of 4 items. Item A concerns photovoltaic systems with the goal of further supporting Cary's growing interest in the installation of private solar systems. And we're back. Item B contains policy updates, including the number of listed benefits that trees and buffers provide to Cary. Item C updates the plant materials list, emphasizing native plants and removing invasive plants to create a healthier landscape. Item D contains technical updates, including adjusting the planting seasons to respond to climate change in the USDA's planting maps, as well as looking at soil volumes and correcting some other types of technical issues. Together, these 4 items represent another step forward in Cary's leadership on the environment. And now I will briefly go through each item. Item A, photovoltaic systems. The Cary community has had a very strong interest in solar installation for a long time. Over 270 residential solar permits have been issued so far this year. To support this growth in solar, Cary participated in the Department of Energy's Soul Smart program. Next slide, please. Right now, you are looking at a recent solar installation in Cary. So through the Department of Energy's Soul Smart program, this year, Cary obtains the silver designation through continuing our strategic training of building inspectors and solar installation, and by creating a web page full of information for residents interested in installing solar on their homes. This update is the next step forward in the Soul Smart certification program and clarifies that solar systems can be installed as an accessory use anywhere in Cary. So Act 20 further supports Cary's already strong interest in solar, and we hope that residents will continue to be inspired to utilize this green technology for their own home. Next slide, please. Item B, environmental policy statements. Trees landscapes, and natural lands provide tangible benefits to Cary citizens, many of which I apologize that I'm having a little bit of network connectivity issues. I hope that y'all can still hear me through that. Trees, landscapes, and natural lands provide tangible benefits to Cary citizens, many of which are listed in various sections in the LDO. Over time, can you go to the next slide, please? Over time, research has revealed more benefits than are currently listed and are important to the welfare of Cary citizens. Thus, item B adds many of these new benefits to the list. So benefits that are going to be added to the various lists include shade, carbon capture, lower temperatures, stormwater abatement, and human health. Adding these benefits makes our lists and policies surrounding trees, landscapes, and natural lands more accurate and responsive to current scientific understanding. Next slide, please. Item C is the plant materials list. The Land Development Ordinance and the Community Appearance Manual provides regulation and guidance surrounding what kind of plants that are installed during development in Cary. Item C updates these regulations by updating the recommended plant material list to emphasize native plants. Next slide, please. Creating a new prohibited planting list that outlines which plants cannot be used to meet planting requirements during development, and moves both lists into standard specifications manual, where it can be more easily found and accessed by members of developers and members of the community. Many people contribute to the plant material list updates, including environmental groups, plant science groups, tree farms, landscape architects, and others. Some examples of changes to the list, including adding native trees like linden on the left to the recommended plant list, while removing non-native and invasive plants like Bradford pear on the right to the prohibited plant list. So these changes will support Cary in continuing to install beautiful, flourishing landscapes. Next slide, please. Item D includes technical updates. Along with updating the species list based on new scientific understanding, Act 20 also updates the planting season based on new scientific information. As the climate changes, so does the ideal time to plant trees and shrubs. As you can see, between 1990 and 2015, Cary has moved from planting zone 7 to planting zone 8, which is much hotter. It is best to plant trees and shrubs during cold weather, so item D changes the planting season to acknowledge our shifting changes in temperatures and seasons. Next slide. During the public hearing, when citizens spoke, they supported the updates and particularly the positive impact on native bird populations and urged for further actions and updates to the LDO. Questions and comments from council. Generally, they were very supportive of these changes, talked a lot about how this is where they see the LDO going, and we're looking forward to more changes brought, particularly surrounding plant materials and programs and actions around plants. They also talked a bit about solar. They asked if solar shingles would be allowed with this new update, with staff replied in the affirmative. And they asked how we could continue to expand our solar programs, including looking at supporting EV through partnerships or other types of programs like that. Next slide, please. So after the public hearing, we made several more changes. We further refined the species list and actually pulled out the allowable planting list into a separate table for understory trees, so it was easier for developers to reference. We updated an understory tree definition with associated species updates. We highlighted the volumetric soil calculation for trees. That was in there originally, but wasn't pointed out as a particular change. And this was done because currently the soil volume required for trees is stated in area as opposed to volume units, area being a 2D, volume being a 3D. So we reconciled that. We also added human health as a benefit provided by trees and vegetation. Multiple commenters, citizens wrote in requesting that addition. We corrected additional grammatical errors within the text. Next slide, please. So many policies in Chapter 8 serve support Act 20. These include Policy 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and I'm happy to read those individual policies, but essentially this is an environmentally focused updates to the LDO that are mostly technical, although there are some policies specifically where we have a lot of strong scientific evidence behind them. And so they really help support most of what's in Chapter 8, which talks about good forward-thinking science-based environmental management. So staff finds the proposed amendments consistent with the plan. Next slide, please. So just a quick review, the 4 main items of focus in Act 20 are solar, environmental policy statements, plant material lists, and technical updates. Next slide. And that, oh, so those are the 2 motions, or that concludes my conversation and presentation on this, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now open it up to the each board member to share any questions or clarifications. We'll start with Andy Coe. Any comments?
I can't hear.
Andy, you on mute?
Yes, I was on mute. I apologize. So no, I don't have any questions. I think that was a very thorough and extremely comprehensive overview, and all makes sense to me.
Okay, perfect. Jessica McClure, comments?
Yeah, I'm not sure who to direct this to, but for item A for the solar, I know there's been a lot of focus on residential use and providing plugins and stuff like that. I don't know if there's been any conversations with more of the commercial or industrial folks that may have larger parking lots about potentially kind of harnessing that, putting in some solar cells on top of that. I don't know who that would go to, or if that's a thought that the town's having.
Are you asking if it's currently illegal for them to do that, or if this act in particular impacts those types of structures?
Yeah, would this impact those types of structures? Would it allow it or disallow it, or is it just mainly residential focused?
This is not just residential focus. It's anywhere where you can have an accessory use, as just saying like solar can be one of those accessory uses. So it actually, currently that is the case because solar is not excluded from accessory uses. We just wanted to make sure it was explicitly included.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, Jeff Moncrief, comments, questions?
So this is probably a question more of my ignorance than anything, but when I think about the plant materials list, like how invasive is that and how granular is that plant materials list? Like, and I'm just trying to understand better. Are we just getting at large plantings? And can you just give me a little bit more detail on how much, how far down that goes? Will it affect individual landscaping in front of someone's yard or those types of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the plant materials list only applies to developments as they're being built and the regulated landscape that is required as part of that development, if that makes sense. So if you are, say you build a new Publix or let's say McDonald's, right? And as part of that, you're required to install 4 street trees and 3 parking lot trees and 10 shrubs. So you have to, the types of trees that you plant must be from that plant materials list or something similar, but they cannot be from the invasive species list. So in other words, the person building McDonald's, if they wanted to, they could put all Bradford trees in their parking lots, but it wouldn't count towards their required parking lot trees. They would still have to put something from that plant materials list or similar on there. So
the Bradford pears, what kind of sparked my interest? Obviously, they're up and down all the roads, and so I'm glad you addressed that specifically. That's what so they can still be planted. They're not prohibited, but you have to have X number of encouraged included.
That's correct. So in the same way, someone is required to put a certain amount of sidewalk in front of their development when they're developing, but they can put other sidewalks other places, right? This is, you have to put a certain number of trees, and we want those trees to be trees that we know benefit Cary, right? We hope you won't plant invasive species because they don't benefit anyone, but this act does not prohibit that. It just, you know, it doesn't prohibit you from going out and planting all the invasive species. We hope you will not. We hope that you will choose from the plant materials list, but this really is focused on development specifically.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, Mike Roselli, comments?
I've actually read through these ordinance specifications previously. I'm glad to see the technical updates and clarifications. No other comments.
Okay, Don Hamilton?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I have a couple of just questions, just to follow up on what Jeff was saying. Is the town unable to, for instance, we'll talk about Bradford pears, beautiful trees, they split in half in about 5 years. You're unable to prohibit them, period? Is that over, the town doesn't have that authority? Or, what, why can't we just say you can't have them, period?
Yeah, so I actually have not explored that question. This was really focusing on what I would consider the low-hanging fruit, which is like, what are we requiring to be planted? So let's start with what we require and make sure we're requiring the right materials. As far as like, do we have the legal authority to prohibit plants in the city, in the municipal boundary? That I would have to kick over to our attorneys.
Okay, because we tell people, hey, if you're building a flat lot, you have to have an island with X amount of plantings in it. It has to be a certain size. You have to have a certain quantity, and it just seems to me a natural extension to say, here's all this awesome stuff you can put in it, and by the way, here's a few things you really cannot put in it. And I know that wouldn't apply to individual homeowners and things of that nature, but at least from a commercial standpoint, just a comment. I haven't seen your updated list, but my other question was, did you have lawn grasses on there? Because there's certain grass that's more drought tolerant than others, zoysia versus fescue, etc.
Yeah, we have, so the regulated species list really focuses on plants and shrubs. We did put in other recommended plant materials as a reference, but we didn't go into turf grasses for this.
Okay.
And that's because the LDO didn't speak to that to begin with.
Okay, perfect. That's always a nice neighborhood discussion. I'm one of those people that has zoysia grass, so it turns brown in the winter, and you either like it or you don't, but it does save a lot of time on maintenance. Okay, awesome. Any other comments or questions?
Steve, this is Jessica Pearson. I have a question.
Sure.
I was just curious, Ms. Levin, under item C, how does this relate to the champion tree policy, where if there's a development that comes before the board and there are champion trees identified that the developer is, planning to maybe remove and then replace, are they required to replace something from the new list? Is that policy addressed with these updates in Act 20?
I was about to say it doesn't relate, but it actually does. So when a champion tree is removed, for the most part, they are required to replace it with a certain number of caliper inch trees, and they are required to replace it with approved planting material. And so this just clarifies that it can't be a column tree, it actually has to be a canopy tree.
Oh, okay.
So I think that was a really positive outcome from this, but otherwise it doesn't really change the champion tree policy in any significant way.
Okay, it just clarifies. Thank you very much for your presentation. I thought it was very interesting, and it's so nice to see the town of Cary getting ahead of these issues. And I really appreciated that graphic that showed since 2015 the increase in the number of solar permits. So I really appreciate our town staying on top of these things and being ahead of where the residents and the development community are. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board member questions, comments? Okay, having none, would someone like to make a motion for Act 20 Land Development Ordinance and Community Appearance Manual amendments? The motions should be on the screen.
Sure. This is Mike. I move that the board find Act 20 amendments to the Land Development Ordinance to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Awesome, thanks. Can I get a second?
Sure.
second.
I'll. Oh,
Wait, I'm sorry.
Everybody
like 5
seconds.
people just seconded it.
Jessica may have beat
Jeff,
me
go
to
ahead.
it.
I think I saw you first.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm impatient.
It's all good. Okay, perfect. Mike, since you made the motion, what are your thoughts behind this?
I'm glad to see the technical clarifications, and it's a good opportunity to help these standards mature. No further comments.
Perfect. Jeff?
Yeah, no, I like the fact I've been involved historically in some organizations that were about beautification and canopy and trees. So that's something I'm passionate about, and just am excited that the fact that, we're learning from prior, issues and developing in a more accommodative way to the environment and on a go forward basis. So I'm excited about it.
Perfect, thanks. Andy, Co?
Yes, I support as well, and no further comment.
Perfect. Jessica McClure?
Yeah, obviously I'm inclined to support based on my third second that I got in there. But no, I trust staff, and I think it's a good move to kind of help with those clarifications and really nail it down so that we can keep the development requirements moving in the right direction.
Perfect. Jessica Pearson?
Yeah, I agree that these the Act 20 amendments are consistent with the comprehensive plan, as Ms. Levin pointed out, meeting all the different policies from the SERV chapter. So I too am inclined to support.
Awesome. Don Hamilton?
I echo Jessica's comments about, I just appreciate staff staying in front of these things. I can see changes like this coming every 3 to 5 years as we move forward.
Perfect. Any other comments, or did I leave anybody out? This will all go better in the future, trust me. We'll talk about that later. For myself, I also support this. I think it's, as someone else said, it's just great for the town to be out in front of this. Any other comments? If not, we'll call the roll for your vote. Andy Co?
Aye.
Jessica McClure?
Aye.
Jeff Moncrief?
Aye.
Jessica Pearson?
Aye.
Mike Roselli?
Aye.
Don Hamilton?
Aye.
And I, Steve Crutchfield, also vote in the affirmative, so that passes unanimously. Okay, the last case on the agenda is 21 REZ Kilmaine Senior Living Rezoning. Our principal planner, Anna Reed, will share the staff's presentation, and following the presentation, the applicant will share their remarks. All board members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff and the applicant. Ms. Redding, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good evening. This is a request to rezone 3.24 acres at 128 Southwest Maynard Road. The property has frontage along Southwest Maynard Road, but the main portion of the site sits back from the road behind a small commercial strip center. To the east is the Mayfair Plaza Shopping Center, and you've probably seen the Glen Air expansion project going up there. And you can see Kildare Farm over to the east. And then to the north and west is the Birch Rose subdivision. And just above the northeast corner is Rose Street Park. The current zoning is general commercial conditional use with the following commercial uses prohibited: veterinarian offices with outdoor kennels, indoor and outdoor kennels, nightclubs, bars, hotels, or motels. The zoning conditions also require increased building setbacks from adjacent residential properties. The majority of the property also falls within the Mayfair mixed-use overlay district. 2 corners of the property fall outside of the mixed-use overlay. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property to mixed use and to extend the mixed-use overlay boundary to fully align with the property boundary. There are no greenway corridors within or adjacent to the site. The subject property abuts Southwest Maynard Road, a 5-lane thoroughfare. Kilmaine Drive, a local street, is located directly across Maynard Road from the property. If this rezoning is approved, the project developer will extend Kilmaine Drive to provide access into the property and construct a roundabout to connect the Kilmaine Drive extension with Gordon Street. Go Carry Route 5 serves Kildare Farm Road, approximately 1,200 feet east of the subject property. Bus stops are located on Kildare Farm Road at the Mayfair Plaza and at the Maynard Road intersection, and those are depicted with the red triangles. Cary's GIS maps indicate the possible presence of a stream on the extreme southern portion of the subject property adjacent to Maynard Road. Field determination will be required at the time of development plan review. Because the request is for MXD zoning within a mixed-use overlay district, the applicant has submitted a preliminary development plan with conditions and standards unique to the subject property. The conditions as presented at the Town Council public hearing are as follows. The use of the property will be limited to 84 age-restricted multifamily units. The maximum building height will be 49 feet or 4 stories. And the developer will record covenants requiring at least 80% of the occupied units to have a resident aged 55 or older. Since the public hearing, the applicant has offered these additional conditions. The roof will be a 4 and 12 pitched roof with architectural shingles and at least 3 vertical and or horizontal roof articulations to provide visual breaks in the roof line. The exterior siding will be fiber cement board with a minimum of 40% masonry, and this is 5% more masonry than is required by the Community Appearance Manual. All exterior lighting will be LED, and parking lot lights adjacent to the single-family residential properties will have backlight shields to ensure there is no light trespass. This is an overview of the preliminary development plan showing the site layout and the proposed site development standards. The 84-unit apartment building is accessed by Kilmaine Drive Extension and the roundabout at Gordon Street. The building overlooks the parking lot located here. The LDO requires 600 square feet of gathering space for sites under 5 acres, which this is, and the applicant is proposing a total of 980 square feet of gathering space distributed over 4 locations. 3 of the gathering spaces each contain bench seating and a patio. The red triangle represents a 4th gathering space with a pavilion. The stormwater control measure will be located here. And a tree survey has revealed there are no champion trees located on the site. The applicant has proposed buffers that meet or exceed LDO requirements. There will be a 40-foot wide buffer on the north end adjacent to residential, a 20-foot wide buffer adjacent to Rose Park. No perimeter buffer is required along internal property lines within a mixed-use overlay district, but the applicant proposes a 10 to 17-foot wide buffer with evergreen plantings here. The buffer was originally 10 feet wide at the public hearing, but since the public hearing, the applicant has found room to increase it in places by 2 to 7 feet. There will be a 50-foot wide streetscape along Maynard Road and streetscape plantings along the west side of the Kilmaine Road extension, which as a local street isn't actually required to have a streetscape, but the applicant will put some there. The applicant's proposal also includes 2 modifications of LDO standards. First, the applicant is requesting the ability to clear and replant as necessary the streetscape along Maynard Road due to very uneven existing topography, as well as the grading that will be necessary for the construction of the Kilmaine Road extension. The LDO requires preservation of existing healthy trees and buffers and streetscapes unless there is justification for removal. Second, the applicant is proposing a parking rate of 0.75 space per bedroom. Cary's recently completed multifamily parking study recommends a rate of about 1 space per bedroom for multifamily residential with an additional 0.15 visitor spaces per unit, though the study didn't differentiate between age-restricted and non-age restricted multifamily complexes. On the future growth framework map, the subject site, oh, I'm sorry, I think I may have, I'm sorry. Could we go back? I left off some important information. So we're still talking about the parking. The applicant has submitted data supplied by the project partner Beacon Management Corporation, a company that owns and manages apartment communities. Beacon Management surveyed 10 age-restricted apartment developments to determine each development's parking to unit ratio and believes the data justify the proposed rate of 0.75 space per bedroom. Those surveys were included as an attachment to your staff report. And now we can go for it. Thank you. On the future growth framework map, the subject site is located primarily within a commercial mixed-use center, with 2 areas on its western perimeter located within the heritage neighborhood category. Heritage neighborhoods such as the Burt Rose subdivision were built during Cary's first suburban boom, 1960s to the early 1980s, and usually have a wide variety of housing types and densities. Commercial mixed-use centers should be compact, walkable, and have an integrated mix of commercial, office, and residential, 3 to 7 stories, transitioning down to 2 to 3 stories. Uses may be mixed both vertically and horizontally. This slide shows the site's location on the western edge of the Mayfair Commercial Mixed-Use Center. The proposed project with a maximum building height of 4 stories would add residential density needed for a successful commercial mixed-use center. Its location at the edge of the center also means the project would serve as both a use and visual transition to the adjacent Burt Rose neighborhood. Commercial mixed-use centers should have a well-defined and interconnected street and pedestrian network. The Kilmaine Drive extension and the roundabout will provide additional connectivity. Sidewalks along the street will provide pedestrian access into and out of the site. Residents may walk to a park, shopping, and to the bus stop at the Mayfair Plaza via sidewalks. Additional services and shopping opportunities are available along Kildare Farm Road, but would require crossing busy thoroughfares. Mixed-use centers should have an active pedestrian realm where buildings front streets, but in this case, the parcel has very little existing frontage on Maynard. The side of the building would front Kilmaine Drive extension with its main entrance facing north toward the parking lot. 8 property owners attended the virtual neighborhood meeting in August, and 3 citizens provided additional comments following the meeting. Concerns included stormwater drainage, clearing of trees next to the houses, height of the building, light impacts, loss of backyard privacy, construction noise, and potential for construction traffic and heavy equipment parking along Gordon Street during construction. The Town Council public hearing was held on October 21st, and 2 citizens spoke. The first speaker expressed concern about the building's proposed height, but said he appreciates the developer's communication with the neighborhood, which he felt had been good. The second speaker expressed concern about noise from construction, but she said she felt the proposed use is a good one. During council discussion, there was general consensus among council members that the proposed use is good and will provide a good transition from the commercial uses at Mayfair Plaza. But there was also consensus that more zoning conditions were needed to demonstrate how the project would complement the neighborhood. Council members also expressed a desire to see mature trees left in the buffers especially where adjacent to residential, a desire to see neighbors' concerns about lighting spillover addressed, a desire to see the buffer next to the commercial on the internal property lines beefed up if possible, although it was acknowledged it was a very tight site, a concern about the aesthetics of the future stormwater control measure as it is kind of front and central there, and a desire to see more effort made to address environmental policies of the SERV chapter. And after the staff report was posted last week, so I was unable to update the staff report with this, staff received some comments from a Gordon Street resident, and Gordon is the dead-end street that would be extended into the roundabout. This resident said he was concerned that if Gordon Street is opened, it will become a cut through and a higher volume of traffic would be dangerous, especially for children who live on the street. Staff's review of the rezoning request finds these policy recommendations from the Live, Shape, Move, and Serve chapters of the Imagine Carry Community Plan to be relevant for discussion. Live, provide more housing options, support residential infill, focus intense development in mixed-use destinations near transit, facilitate infill development to capitalize on existing infrastructure, provide harmonious transitions, provide additional system connections, and underserve, improve air quality, and preserve and protect the urban tree canopy. And just as a note, beginning with this case, number 21 REZ 11, staff will be analyzing rezoning requests against SERV chapter's environmental policies. So staff's analysis finds that the proposal provides a new housing option for seniors near shopping and transit. Pedestrian routes to some shopping and services will require crossing thoroughfares, but in this location, residents will qualify for Go Carry door-to-door service. The Kilmaine Road extension and sidewalk increases connectivity and also provides a signalized egress for Bertrose residents on the Maynard Road. The project provides residential density on an infill site in a targeted mixed-use center, but in doing so, does remove tree canopy to provide the additional housing and the new road and sidewalk connection. Helping to balance the environmental impact somewhat is that infill development and increased connectivity should help reduce overall vehicle miles traveled. The project provides an effective use transition between nearby commercial and the detached residential and Bertrose subdivision. A more gradual step down in building mass and height would make a better visual transition, but the additional architectural conditions the applicant has offered since the public hearing will help enhance the residential appearance of the building. All said, the project may provide a more harmonious transition than many of the commercial uses currently allowed by right. So based on this analysis, staff's preliminary finding is that the requested zoning and the conditions offered appear to be consistent with the Imagine Carry Community Plan. And this concludes my presentation, and I believe the applicant, Doug Letson, is present and will provide comments.
So thank you all for reviewing this. I've had this property for quite some time. Been going back and forth. Many of the neighbors will testify to this, that I've been doing everything I can to my best to try to accommodate them. And that's why you haven't seen any heavy commercial move forward on this. You saw what is allowed and go 3 up to 7 stories, depending on how far you are away from the residential. So, we're quite a bit below that. But the key thing here is the type of use. So in reality, we're down zoning. We're going from what could be a heavy commercial use with the exception of those 3 exclusions, and not just going with an apartment, but a senior development. As you probably are aware, with senior developments, you have a lot less traffic. The other thing is because they're not going to work, they're not filling the roads when there's heavy traffic. So that's the other thing that we see as a benefit. From the neighborhood, the other thing we see is it's about the quietest neighbor you can have. It also presents one of the safer areas because for whatever reason, we find that many elderly people, they watch everything around them like a hawk. So, if there is any, thing coming from the shopping area, they're gonna have their eyes on them. So we think it's good overall for the neighborhood. None of the neighbors, and I mean none of them, wanted a commercial use. They actually wanted a park more than anything else, but again, that's something that Town of Cary did not want to pursue. We're gonna have some connectivity to Rose Park. Again, to make better use of the public facilities. The other nice thing about this is because it is adjacent to the Mayfair Plaza, many of the seniors are going to be, whether it be they're walking there, or they might have one of those battery operated scooters, whatever it is, they're going to be utilizing that shopping center, usually utilizing that commercial area more than it presently is. And again, because they are seniors, for the most part, they drive less, which is also good overall for traffic. And, also from the time when they are on the road, that's the other benefit, where it's not during the heavier traffic times. So we have put on, several conditions. One, to really give us that residential look. As you already have heard, there's been no complaints on the use. Everybody likes the use. You did have several town council members that they wanted to get a better idea of what the building could look like. Said, we don't want anything verbal, we want it in writing. So we did. We put a number of conditions, both on the roof line, the materials that would be used. It is all masonry or that hardy plank type material. There's nothing else but that on the siding. So we feel it'll be a very nice transition from, as I say, there's been no complaints about it. Nobody in that neighborhood wants commercial, period. The other thing we did is we had two, probably the loudest thing we heard from the neighbors was the lighting. And the reason being is Glen Air, which is presently being constructed, you've got security lights on the top of their building, which is a 6-story building. So they say, well, we can see those lights at night, it's bothersome, it's irritating. And, and those are the people that kind of back up or are very close to where Glen Air is. I said, one is, we're not a 6-story. Two, that's a commercial building. This is gonna be a residential building. So it's not gonna have steel, you're gonna have all the steel framing being erected and everything else. It's gonna be like any other house, if you had a 4-story house or a 4-story apartment.
Doug, if I may, not to interrupt, sir, if I may. Sorry, this is Patrick Theismann. I'm Doug's development partner, along with our architect who's here as well. But I wanted to respond specifically to the traffic question. With our due diligence with the town, we had Exalt Engineering do a traffic study, and there would be no, I don't even say substantial, but there would be no impact on any additional traffic from a senior community.
Okay. All right, good. I appreciate that. Yeah, and that was a good point because we did use Exalt Engineering, which is a traffic engineering firm that did that analysis on there. And DOT also, they said that they saw that as
and Exalt worked with DOT to make sure that the alignment was correct and compliant with town regs as well. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So again, what we've got now is by downzoning it, we're getting a use that the neighbors are happy with, which again, that's been one of my interests. I don't know how many on the board have been there for a number of years, but if you have, back about 6 years ago, we went through on one of them, and that the neighbors liked, but the town council didn't like. We've been trying to get now focused on both. We think we've got that now. The issues that the council members have brought up, where they get a better idea of what it's going to look like, by conditions, not verbal, but by conditions, we have done that. Both on materials being used and the articulations for the roof, etc., to add that more residential look. So we are wanting that to get a nice transition with, even though we're down zoning, we're still wanting to further make it something that reflects more of a residential use rather than any commercial use at all. It's not just in other words, if you were to look at Glen Air, that 6-story building right now, it kind of looks like a commercial building. Ours is not. It's because it is going to have a residential roof on it. Minimum 4 and 12 is going to be the minimum slope on it. Some areas might have 5 and 12, but again, it was to get that residential look. So we did that with conditions. The other thing that I think is critical is from the town standpoint, what does this do? Well, one is we know the town is aging out. I saw, and they had a big article on that in Cary about how the town was aging out and they need to provide housing for those residents. And with this, Glen Air is a fabulous development. I think it's just a tremendous benefit for Cary, but it's a very high-end development, extremely high-end. Ours is not. One is we don't provide the meals. This is like a regular apartment. They're 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units only. And again, to reflect more on the parking, as Anna has said, we provided several parking. We had surveys done. We're still trying to get even more, but what we found is per bed, NCHFC or HFA, and NCFHA requires 1 parking spot per unit. In Cary, they're wanting to do it per bed because that's what their consultant came up with. But again, they made no distinction between the
Mr.
family
Letson,
development.
you have about 1
Yes.
minute left. You have 1 minute
Okay, I'm
remaining.
sorry. Excuse me. So we went from 37 on the low end on parking per bed to 71%. We're asking for 75%. So it's still 4% higher than the highest use that we've been able to show. And that's only in one development. 2/3 of them were below 60%. So we're considerably below that. So if you have any questions, certainly I would welcome them. And I guess that's it from my end.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentations. Board members, as we previously discussed, when you're asking your questions, please keep the community plan in mind. And when you're making your motions, to try to tie them back into the applicable chapter that you think fits your motion. Having said that, we're going to open the board for questions and comments. And let's start with Don Hamilton for any thoughts.
Thank you. To lead with, I really appreciate the pictures that staff showed. It really helped me understand a lot of what was going on. The biggest question I have is, we don't rezone it. Under the current rezoning, what is the building height max?
The present is you can go from 3-story to 7-story, depending on how far you are away from the residences.
Well, if I may clarify something there, I think that when I mentioned the 3 to 7 stories, that is what the Cary Community Plan envisions in a mixed use overlay, mixed commercial area with as the highest, and then looking at transition properties to be lower. Now that's what the plan envisions for these types of mixed use areas. Now, the zoning is a different matter, and that is commercial, as you pointed out. And I'm going to look it up right this minute. I have it, and I'll tell you in just a minute what the height in commercial could be.
That's my only question. I appreciate it.
Tammy, you going to get back, or is that something you're going to answer now?
Well, I don't have it quite yet, but I will get back to you. Sorry.
Okay, we'll move forward, and then if you get it, just jump in, okay?
Sure, sure.
Okay, perfect. Mike Roselli, questions?
No questions, just a couple comments. I've seen this property sit here for quite a while. It's an awkward shape. It's an awkward kind of the last one, the last piece where everything around it has been developed in different uses, some that conflict with each other. And I recognize that a lot of those are very difficult to kind of negotiate a harmonious transition, which is what's written in the community plan. And I think this plan does a lot to try to find something harmonious to all of the adjacent properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Pearson?
Oh, thank you. I do have a couple questions. It was mentioned that there is network connectivity from the proposed site. So will all of the streetscapes have sidewalks?
Yes. No, yeah, all along Maynard, it will have sidewalks. Likewise, even going to Gordon Street. Where there's no
Yeah, so
sidewalk
the
there now.
connection where Kilmaine is extended to Gordon Street.
I
Yes,
think it may have
there is.
sidewalk on one side,
Correct.
not on both sides. I
And
think
this
that's
is
correct.
okay. And why is the stormwater retention pond at the front of the site, adjacent to Maynard Road?
The reason being is that because of the grade, there's no other, you cannot pump it upstream. Literally, it all grades, the whole property grades and gets quite substantial when you get up on Maynard, where you've got a drainage easement along Maynard because of all the properties draining towards there. And this is the natural grade that's on there. So there's no other place to put it. It had to be up there, but we still have that, it's still gonna be 50-foot streetscape against that.
And if I may interject, I did get the height. So in the commercial, in the general commercial, the height limit is 35 feet. But you can go to 50 feet if if the building is more than 100 feet from residential uses. In this case, the building is not quite 100 feet. It's a little shy of that from the nearest residential, but you can envision if it were commercial, it would be difficult to stay completely away from residential by 100 feet. So then if you couldn't, then that would be 35 feet as the maximum height.
Thank you for that.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Jessica. We get back to you.
Okay, thank you. And it appears that the front of the building is facing away from Maynard Road. Is there a reason why the parking and the building weren't flipped around?
We were actually wanting to go the other way, but the town of Cary requires that one side of the building be on a public street. So that was a requirement by planning when we first started this.
So which public street is the building facing? Is it Gordon Street?
It's not facing it. You have to have one side of the building, at least one side of the building facing a public street. Doesn't matter which side, but if we would put it on the other side, Kilmaine, we would have had no public. It would have, literally Kilmaine would have gone into a parking lot, not allowed. You have to have one side of the building, basically, not basically, I mean, one side of the building facing that public street. If we would push it on the other side, which we initially I had a design done that way, then there would have been no public, street as an access or that would be against the building. So that's why that was done. It was done because of whatever UDO requirement.
Okay, I have one more question. It's a 4-story building. There's 84 units in the building. So are there residential units on every floor in the building? Are there any community gathering spaces inside the building?
Yes, there is. I mean, the building is being done. We're going to be running it through the North Carolina for tax credit development. So they have requirements in there. Now, we don't know if we're going to get that approved, but we're going to be building the building as if it is. So with that, you're required to have several interior recreational areas. You're also required to have a certain amount of exterior meeting places, whatever, like you've got. And we've gone over 50, I think it's over 50% more than what the town requires for those recreational areas or meeting areas. In the interior, there's several different types of rooms, from an exercise room. You've got a kind of community, a community gathering room inside. Anyway, there's several different rooms that we have a computer room.
If I may, Beacon Management, we have developed affordable communities since 1979. We have a full-time resident service coordinator that works directly for Beacon, and we either will have a part-time, depending on the size of the community, but given the size of this one, we would have a full-time resident service coordinator that would be facilitating a lot of services for the residents in the multi-purpose room as well as other activities.
Oh, thank you. That's helpful to understand. I don't have
and
any
I'm happy
further
to,
questions.
they put out, my RSCs put out like wonderful newsletters and stuff like that. So if there's anything I can send you, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Nothing further.
Jeff Moncrief, questions?
I'll make a comment and then have maybe one question just to follow up on the concern about traffic back into the residential area. But just as a resident of Cary for 10 years, I live in the Kildare Farms area, and so I'm very familiar with this location. And I do appreciate the fact that we're trying to transition. Obviously, I think that's one of the areas of, I'm intrigued as a new member of this board to see what will happen with those remaining areas, over the years. But this is a nice transition from the neighborhood to the, to the shopping center there, as far as I can tell. And it's an area that doesn't look easy to build on, having seen it a number of times. But just as far as two things, you mentioned no connectivity to the Greenway. But actually, there's a lot of Greenway not too far from there. So by getting access, what's the name of the street with the G on that? Gordon. Getting access to Gordon on the back effectively does get some connectivity to the Greenway, if I'm not mistaken. The bike trail is just right up the road there. But how about traffic and the cut through? Is there direct access from the Food Lion and all those places where we're going to have an ingress egress across your parking lot, or are there some thoughts around how to protect against that?
Well, if I can, by the way, Jeff, your tree is fantastic behind you, by the way. It looks awesome. But no, so a majority of Beacon's portfolio is elderly. And I can say that 20% on the lower end and 40% on the higher end of our residents have cars. So there will not be any impact in regard to traffic, as we noted earlier with the traffic study that was done. We don't necessarily encourage folks to walk across, but yes, I mean, if they need to walk across the parking lot, that's fine, but we also need to take the security of our residents into consideration, if that's sort of the root of your question.
No, I'm just curious, does the parking lot have access adjoining to the commercial property immediately adjacent to it or not? And if it does,
right
then
now,
ingress through that.
I see. Yeah, right now we do not. We are going to stub it out though. We're looking into this to see if we have an easement. We will provide a document that specifically said access easement, and the Mayfair Plaza just informed us recently that we don't, and they don't want to give it to us. But eventually, Cary does want to have that connectivity. the same way neighbors did not want connectivity from Gordon Street. As Anna had said, some of the neighbors that called, they don't want any connectivity. Town of Cary does. One, for a couple of reasons, giving access to a stoplight. And, overall, they feel that, they've had us put in a traffic circle to reduce any likelihood that there's going to be anybody racing down the road to slow
Gotcha.
cars down. But nonetheless, they wanted that connectivity. So they came up with ways of reducing any, let's say, where people are, sometimes when people are taking trying to take a shortcut, they're trying to race down there, to save another 30 seconds. So with having the traffic circle, that will reduce that.
That directly addresses my question. Thank you.
Great.
And one thing I'd like to circle back on is the retention area. One thing that we're looking at is a biocell or sand filter and other, like, we're not just, unless the town requires it, we're not dead set on the retention pond. Several of my properties have them. They look very good. We plant the things around them that will grow and will add aesthetics to it. But there are other ways to do retention, and we're not. So we'd love the town's guidance on that as well.
And just so you know, one of the things that we have also been looking at, because I know there's one member that wanted to have something that was a little more aesthetically pleasing, is one of the things, like as Patrick is saying, we're looking at different ways. We're going to let the engineers work on that, an engineering firm. One of the things that was brought out is possibly using a floating fountain with LED lights. And that would be something that would even give something that would be, not just having the spray, but at night having the light. So give us something that's really aesthetically.
Mr. Ledson, this is Deborah
Yes.
Grannon with the Planning Department. I need to remind you, we need to just focus the attention on the zoning and the zoning conditions that
Okay,
you've offered.
sorry.
We need to really wrap this up and get it back on track. We're talking about aesthetic elements that are not integrated into zoning conditions. So we need to focus on the use and the conditions that have been presented. So I do appreciate your passion about the project, but we really need to make sure that we're not muddying the water with things that might be nice to have or how the programs are operating. Just stick with the facts and stick with the zoning conditions as they've been presented.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. Jessica McClure, any questions?
No more questions. Thanks.
Andy Coe, any questions?
I had one point of clarity and then just a comment. The roundabout that's included in the plan, I couldn't tell. I read through, there were lots and lots and lots of documents. But was that something that was recommended by the town of Cary? Is that something that came from the planning group?
That came from the planning department, Cary Planning. They specifically wanted that in transportation.
Okay.
That's
what I thought.
Planning, I think that was, if I could add to that, I think that was actually a transportation department recommendation due to the traffic calming that it would offer. But planning wasn't opposed to the idea.
Okay. No, that's good. There's a lot of benefits there.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, no, I understand there's a lot of benefits there. I could also see that for some of the folks in the neighborhood, that's going to be an increase in traffic back and forth, which may be less than what a commercial property would offer. So maybe that's a good thing. No, that's my one question. And then the only other comment, I guess this will be something that the town council will deal with and approve. Obviously, the parking, it seems a little bit ambiguous about the the specifics regarding the recommended amount of parking, and understanding this is for a community that probably won't have as many cars, but obviously that's the one area to me that kind of stands out, that it obviously does not meet the recommended number of parking spaces for a community with 84 units in there. I understand you've done the study and I read the comments there. So I guess, you know, that's my only really concern. I think beyond that, I think this is a very good use of the property.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I might just interject quickly to that point, and I understand completely, but I'd be more than happy to show you and take you a tour of our properties here in Greensboro that will show you that, truthfully, seniors, especially as Doug as is in our in our application, Doug had mentioned the accessibility to public transportation here. I understand the concern, but it's remarkable that, truthfully, their parking spaces are not utilized, and it does create more of an impervious surface. So it's kind of a win-win in regards to site development as well as utilizing the property to its best abilities.
Yeah, and Andy, also to address your issue here, if you look at all the surveys, because that's all we did, we sent out surveys, the highest one was 71%. That was the highest one. The lowest was down to 30-something%. So I understand your concern, but there is a huge difference between a senior development. You know, when the consultants, as was told you, they never made a distinction between a family development, millennial development, or a senior development. And those are massively different, have massively different parking requirements. We know millennials are absolutely going to have, wherever there's a bed, there's going to be a car. Absolutely. With the senior development, one of the things that you would find is that the NCHFA, they put out a requirement to more than cover themselves by putting one, now they do it not on bed, but per unit. And we have got to meet that. So it's a minimum of one parking space per unit. To my knowledge, that at least with the NCHFC, they don't have anything above that. There's some that were below it, so they decided to make it one per. So all I'm getting at here is that they're,
yeah,
with the other
that's
requirements.
fine. I mean, I've read all the material.
I know this is drug on. I know this is drug on, and I apologize. And it was my fault for dragging it on. I just will just say, to Doug's point, that I would say 98% of my residents that have 2 bedrooms are single occupant residents as well. So I just wanted to wrap that up, and I apologize. I know I kind of drug this on.
And that's fine, guys. It still doesn't change the fact that it does not meet the requirements, but I appreciate you providing that additional detail.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're gonna close the comments on that. Andy, any other questions from you?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, for myself, I do not have any questions. Everything I have has been covered. So with that, we're going to close the comments from staff and the applicant. And I'm going to ask the board if there is someone that would like to make a motion for 21 REZ 11 Kilmaine Senior Living rezoning. The suggested wording is up on the screen.
Yeah, Steve, this is Jessica. I'll make a motion. I
Okay,
move
thanks.
that the board find case number 21 REZ 11 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Thank you. Can I get a second from someone?
This is,
I'm sorry, I missed
I think that was Mike Roselli who seconded it.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Jessica, let's begin with you for just the final comments behind your
Sure.
motion.
Yeah, so the reason I appreciate the comments from all the board members in the discussion, but the reason I decided to make the motion that it is consistent is because I do believe it's an appropriate use and that it provides a new housing option for seniors that's close to shopping and transit, as Ms. Redling described in the staff report. It's also an infill site in a mixed-use center, and so that's a positive. It also promotes network connectivity consistent with the MOVE chapter. And then finally, I always appreciate it when applicants add additional zoning conditions after meetings with the neighborhood, and they did add enhanced architectural features. So for those 4 reasons, I do think that this rezoning is consistent.
Thank you. Mike Roselli, your thoughts on the motion?
Yeah, this is Mike. Again, I think that this is probably the most harmonious thing that could possibly go here. And I find it consistent with the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Don Hamilton, comments?
No, I really don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff Moncrief?
No, I just say that I agree that this is about as good a use as you could get out of that location. And it's a nice transition, and I appreciate how much the developer has worked with and solicited feedback from the community. So I think it's going to be a good project.
Okay, thanks. Jessica McClure, comments?
I'm inclined to support it. As the other Jessica said, it hits on quite a few of the points in the live chapter, which I think is really good. And as you know, Mike and others have mentioned, I think this is probably about the best transition you'll get here.
Thank you. Andy Coe, comments?
No additional comments. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And I have just a small comment. I also would tend to support this. However, based on previous conversations, and this is really something that the town council will have to sort out. But I also think that that parking is an issue. It just needs to be discussed. It's not big enough that I would vote against this, but only 80% of the homes are required to have a person age 55 and up, if I read that correctly. And there could be other members of the household. There only needs to be one 55-year-old up in the housing. So that may be a concern going forward.
Actually, sir, with respect, if I may interject, the only way that they can is that they are a registered caregiver.
No,
So
well, our comment section is closed.
I'm sorry, sir? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Discussion. We can't really have any additional comments.
I apologize, sir. I'm so sorry. I apologize.
That's okay. You'll have your opportunity when this goes to the town council. But
I
again,
sincerely
that's my only
apologize.
thoughts
I'm so
on
sorry.
this. It's not something that would make me not support this, but I do believe it's an item that should be thought about as we go forward. Okay, any other comments from board members? Okay, having said that, I'll call the roll for your vote. Don Hamilton?
Aye.
You said aye?
Sorry about that. Aye.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Mike Roselli?
Aye.
Jessica Pearson?
Aye.
Jeff Moncrief?
Aye.
Jessica McClure?
Aye.
Andy Coe?
Aye.
And I, Steve Crutchfield, also vote aye. So based on that, this 21 REZ 11 Kilmaid Senior Living passes unanimously. And that really concludes our cases for the evening. We have one other item that's in old and new business. And it's something that I personally am very excited about. And that is right now, the way things look, we are very likely that this will be our last virtual meeting. And we were going to resume meeting in person starting in January 2022. I'm super excited about that. I hope, yes, thank you. I agree. I hope everyone else is excited about it.
Yes.
You know, I really want to thank the staff for making these calls happen. They are very difficult, but they've worked well. But the logistics and the planning it's hard on the staff. It's hard on the applicants, and I really look forward, especially since we have new members, to seeing everybody in person. And I can assure you, when we're in person, the meetings go so much better. So I really look forward to that, and hopefully nothing will happen that will derail that. Any other comments before we close the meeting?
I would just like to wish everyone happy holidays.
Yes, thank you very much. I second that.
Absolutely.
See you in the new year.
Okay, I look forward to seeing you again in person. And again, thank you everyone for your patience tonight. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks for all your work.
Good night.
Thanks, Deborah.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.